Shalom, shalom. This is Thursday Night Live. I'm Rabbi Shapiro, and we are live at Open Temple House for what is a new tradition. And as Jews, we love tradition. We're all about Masoret. So here we are creating a new tradition. And this is basically 30 minutes of inspiration every Thursday night, sponsored by the Jewish Journal. And we say such gratitude to David Suissa and the Jewish Journal for sending Armando, gratitude for Armando as well, out to Open Temple House. If we hear fabulous ambient sound, it's because we are live indeed in Venice, California, just a stone's throw from Abbot Kinney Boulevard, which GQ magazine calls the coolest block in America. I don't know about that, but they sell lots of good things that no one needs. Anyway, tonight's theme is renewing creation, making the most out of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. This is real. And as Rabbi Alan Liu, Zichrono Livracha, said, and we are entirely unprepared. In order to really move into a new space, I want to honor what we're creating tonight is a new space and time with this Thursday Night Live. So I kind of want to gather us together for a moment of Shehechianu. I love Shehechianus. My children think I'm whack-a-doodle because I do them all the time, because it is a prayer that gathers this moment in time. So I just want us all to kind of, we could take our arms, and get our pulse and feel that incredibly tenacious and resolute muscle. Just feel it in every moment pulsing. And declare with that pulse, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu, v'kiyamanu, v'higianu, lazman hazeh. I am alive in this moment in time, and I have deep gratitude for being here. And so, with that, let's talk about the matter at hand. First, I'm going to put down some rules because we can't start anything new without a covenant. Indeed, at Open Temple House, right across where you can't see in the camera, here we have my beautiful Sfarim, and there's a gorgeous painting by Orit Arfa, who's a Jewish Journal journalist. She now lives in Berlin, but she painted that when she was 17. It's of Rav Soloveitchik. And in the back, what you can't see is our community ketubah. A ketubah is a written document, and it kind of states the covenant, the brit of the community. So I wanted to establish a covenant for us tonight. And with this covenant come kavanot, kind of intentions that we're putting forward. So I want to first put around the intention that this shiur comes from a place of love. And I have to tell you what love is, because love in the English language pops like a soap bubble in our face. It's such a word, love you, see you later, love, right? Heart, heart. That's not the love we're talking about. We're talking about ahava. We're talking about Jewish love. Jewish love, ahava, is a deep diaphragmatic workout. I mean, it is ahava. Exhausting, demanding, rigorous, and something that requires really strength, koyach, our whole body. So we're going to start with a rule book of love, real love, meaning this is work. Second, we have to open our hearts to transformation. This is a time of Rosh Hashanah, which has the same bilateral root as Shanui. It's a time of change and transformation. And in order to do so, we've got to have a kavanah, an intention of transformation. Next, I want to recommend everyone getting a journal and a pen, because there's time for reflective moments in the learning we're going to do together. So get something to write down questions for yourself, to do some reflective points. Just right now is a good time as I'm talking to get a journal. And next, when judgments arise, because we're all judgy. In the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENFJ. I got that J. I'm super judgy. I've found that in my life, my journey is to transform my judgments into enlightenments. That when a judgment arises, they're really an opportunity to kind of like a two-sided Kandinsky, flip that picture over and maybe allow that light of judgment to shine on myself for a deepening of self-knowing. So when judgments arise, let them bubble to the surface, write them down. They offer us some insight into who we are. Next, I want to say there are many different ways to do Jewish, right? There are many different ways to do Jewish. So this is just one path that I'm offering tonight. And I honor that there are so many other paths. And I know in the future that David and I have spoken about there being like a live streaming and some questions and answers and Bakorit, like, harsh rebuke or criticism that comes forward. I welcome it. This is at its best a machloket, a time of disagreement and differing opinions that then allow us to go through some kind of dynamic that will evolve into a new understanding and reveal a new truth. Like a geode cracking open, right? What's inside. Finally, I want to talk about Jewish denominationalism. Jewish denominationalism, can I even say the word? Jewish denominationalism is a 19th century innovation. It's a 19th century innovation that happened post-emancipation when we were allowed to be Germans first and Jews second, or French people first and Jews second. And then what arose are concepts of like, I am conserving Judaism, I am reforming Judaism, I am orthodox in my praxis. Whatever it is that we say that we are, let's acknowledge that we're just all Klal Yisrael, and every tanua, every stream of Judaism has a different veracity to lend to. Not one is not more correct than the other. We're all Klal Yisrael, and it's that beautiful ideal that I enter into this holy space tonight to talk about Rosh Hashanah. So when going into Rosh Hashanah, we really have to think of it in context of time, because it really is a moment in time that then overlays on the calendar of the Jewish year. And when we look at how we understand Rosh Hashanah, we also have to understand it's not only time, but it's place. So I'm going to talk about the Jewish calendar just for a little bit. It relates to time and place because we are a fixed lunar calendar. So we are a calendar of time, with this experience of these revolutions around a sun that are fixed to a lunar occurrence of the waxing and waning of the moon. So the concept of marking time in Judaism demands of us to also have an apprehension of the way space is being understood. And indeed, when you look at Rosh Hashanah itself, or any time of a new year or a new month, we always enter it into the new moon, when the moon is occluded. And indeed, one of the names of Rosh Hashanah, Yom HaKiseh, the day of the occlusion, or what's hidden, reminds us that there's something about coming into time and space where something is occluded and then will be revealed. So there's something about space and place that's going to illuminate for us and grow in time. Also, the Jewish calendar, as it's a fixed lunar calendar, also has biblical history to it, rabbinic, Zionist. There are major fasts, there are minor fasts, there are historic memories that attach themselves to Shalosh Regalim. There is so much packed into one revolution around our sun as Jews. It's kind of like not only one experience of going around the sun, but each year attaches itself to a time machine that we enter into to understand what people experienced before us and bring it fold it into the experience of each holiday as we have it. But I also want to kind of bring ourselves to where this holiday really begins. And in order to enter into Rosh Hashanah, we have to acknowledge that it is a journey that really started with a disruption on the 17th of Tammuz in the biblical imagination. Moshe Rabbeinu was coming down from Sinai with the first luchot, the first tablets, and experienced the Bacchus of the Israelites below, worshiping a golden calf, like the ultimate insult post-revelation. What could be the ultimate insult but people who had no emunah, right? People who experienced whatever happened at Sinai. Abraham Joshua Heschel tells us something happened at Sinai, something. And Torah was written to try to describe it. So they experienced this thing that defined our identity. And right afterwards, when their leader goes and has some work to do, they all lose faith. And they create this molten image of a God they once knew. And in that lapse of faith, Moses comes down and breaks the tablets. And in breaking the tablets, that's the beginning of the shever, of the brokenness of our peoplehood. And that brokenness then begins a 90-day ascent into what's going to be Rosh Hashanah and then Yom Kippur, to renew what was lost. And there's a process in our historic imagination captured in the Bible. That process brings us through Moshe's experience as the first demi-experience of those days between the 17th of Tammuz and Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. They say Yom Kippur is the day he brought the second tablets down. But there's something in that process that happens that we are asked to step into that process. Ki'ilu, as if. Ki'ilu, as if we are a demi Moshe Rabbeinu. Like, as if, right? But really, we're supposed to, he's the most human of prophets, right? Flawed, complex, humble, and also timid, and also self-doubting and self-judging. What a great anti-hero to be our doppelganger, right? To enter into. So we go from the 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av, and the 9th of Av, it's the 11th month and the 9th day, and we are reconciling on that day this historic imagination of what is broken. It remembers the destruction of the first and second temple. It remembers the Inquisition. It remembers pogroms. It remembers so many things that they say were attributed, even 9/11, right? 9/11, September 11th, 2001. Also 9/11, another Tisha B'Av in our modern imagination. What is broken in this world? What is broken at this time? We must begin with our broken hearts. Because if our hearts are not broken open, then the deep work of heart sweat will not happen. And the work that we are being called to do right now on high holidays is like puff in the air. So we have to go into loss, we have to go into trauma, we have to let the ego go, and we have to look at what's broken in our lives. That's Tisha B'Av. In a personal place of brokenness, I want to just acknowledge that it always happens this time of year when we enter the count of the days towards Rosh Hashanah, and there's like a specific count. People say Rosh Hashanah is Yom Harat HaOlam. We'll talk about this in a little bit. We say it's the birthday of the world. But what I like to say is, and what the rabbis teach us as well, is it's not the birthday of the world. It's actually the sixth day of creation. So it's not the birthday of the world. It's the birthday of the sixth day, which is the birth of humans. And so really what was created on the first day was our ability to apprehend creation. So sure, you had Yom Rishon and Yom Sheni and 6 days, but it really wasn't until the sixth that we got to document this story in the biblical imagination. The sixth day is the creation of Heskel, discernment, the creation of understanding, the creation of human wisdom and human potential. And always, as we begin that 6-day count, I feel like, I'm a gas stove, and that the flame is being turned up. And what has happened over these past few days? Such brokenness arising. Every day, not a day goes by where I get a phone call. And every day I get a phone call of someone who's broken. The phone call happens, I pick up the phone, someone's weeping on the other line. There's a parent who they have to go unplug. There's a job that they need to get out of because they feel like they're suffocating. There's a visitation with a father who doesn't see their self-worth, and a young man says, I feel in exile of my Creator. There is so much that happens always on this intense 6-day period. I have a colleague who today called me. He has 5 funerals and Shiva Minyans between 2 days ago and Rosh Hashanah. Something happens. It's a portal that opens. And remember, I talked about Rosh Hashanah and the Yamim Noraim, these days of being a days in space and time, right? Where we're apprehending this world beyond us. And as I like to say, those stars that we're looking at, they're the past. Those are the same stars of the creators of Torah, the same stars of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, of Moshe and Miriam. So that time that we're stepping into also knows of those who came before us who have left. So I feel a palpable presence of the curtain being pulled back into eternity and an invitation to commingle with what lies beyond. It's at this time that we have to acknowledge whether or not we're in the cauldron and our lives are really heated, or if we're kind of like somnolently sleepwalking through life. We have to acknowledge that the awakening is being called out by each of us. And there might not be an inciting incident into our lives. It might not be that we are being irrevocably called with alacrity. It might be that we're just going through the motions. And that, in some ways, is the most virulent truth. It is the most poisonous threat to our lives. Because if we live our lives with complacency, we must ask ourselves in our last breath, did I really live? So the Amim Noraim are a beautiful technology constructed over thousands of years that offer us an invitation to come back to life. And that's what we're going to do today. We do what's called Cheshbon HaNefesh. We have to do an accounting of our soul. And in order to do so, we really have to look, how am I complicit in this mess that surrounds me? Lots of people like to be partisan right now. Lots of people like to fetch about what's going on in the world stage. And what I say is, what a great illusion that is. What a great distraction from our own culpability, from our own messiness. I say, turn off that TV. Not this right now, but turn off or turn down the volume. Let it go for a day or two to really dwell in our complicity with what we're experiencing. What have I done to contribute to this? There's, that new agey concept of the butterfly effect, right? Someone does something awful here and somewhere else a butterfly dies. You understand? I didn't explain that so well, but you can Google it and look it up. But the concept is that our actions have impact. Just like my sounds from my voice are a sound wave that go out into eternity, our actions too reverberate. And so Cheshbon HaNefesh, the accounting of our soul that begins with an acknowledgement of our own inner brokenness, has to begin with this idea that I kind of am missing the mark. Torah itself is this idea of hitting the mark, right? It's about getting into bullseye. And none of us are living bullseye, right? Who bats 1,000? I mean, you're good if you get 247 and you're batting average. So what I'd like to think is that we were given this gift of this time of judging ourselves and standing before something larger than ourselves that we might call God. Lots of names for that. We'll get there in a second. And when we go into that space, it actually is an incredibly safe space to enter, to see how we're missing the mark in our lives. I want to read a quote. It's okay to read a quote? I'm going to read a quote. This is by Rabbi Tirza Firestone. She wrote a beautiful book. It came out this summer, From Wounds to Wisdom. I just want to give a blessing, Baruch Tehiyeh, to this rabbi of mine, who has such depth. She's a rabbi. She's experienced incredible loss in her life. And she's a scholar, and she's a PhD, and she's a renewalist. Another beautiful tenua that comes out of Boulder, Colorado. And in her book, she really acknowledges the courage required of us to face loss, and how when we have the courage to face that loss, it becomes a transformative opportunity to begin again. She writes, facing our losses means being willing to look at the new territory of our lives, confront the wreckage, and grieve for what is no longer. It also means experiencing pain, which may fluctuate from day to day, or even hour to hour, and wear a myriad of ugly faces. I'm just going to add as a commentary, let it all out. Let all the uglies out. She says, let yourself feel rage, terror, despair, pain, hatred, futility, feeling run over by a truck and more. She says, go to that place. Because a part of what happens when we surrender is that we give ourselves the gift of allowing what is organically to be born, to renew itself. Sometimes we don't have to take so much responsibility for a birth. I was blessed to be pregnant twice. They were incredible experiences, and I would walk around all day saying, I think it's totally a renewal of my cleaving to a God concept, because I have no idea how my body is doing it, and yet my body knows exactly what to do. And indeed, 9 months later, I gave birth. I gave birth beautifully, and these two beautiful, beautiful children were born. And I had no idea how that went down. So there's something about the surrender to the process that allows birth to happen. And we all need to, at this time, to live in that kind of incredible fecundity of becoming. Anis Nin writes in Risk, and then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. High holidays are a free fall. Are you ready to jump? Viktor Frankl. Something I learned. I have a really beautiful havruta with a bunch of guys at Netz Minyan at Chabad in Pacific Palisades, and Rabbi Kunin told me that Viktor Frankl was actually inspired by the Lubavitcher Rebbe to write Man in Search of Meaning. I never knew that. So again, it just shows how Chabad is everywhere. So Viktor Frankl writes, the survivor who knows the why for his existence will be able to bear almost any how. In order to have the fortitude to move past the 10th of Tishrei, we need to ask ourselves why. Why am I here? Why am I on this earth? Why was I created? For what purpose have I become? And what am I doing to get in the way of that becoming? So I want to invite everyone who has a journal to take a moment out, to take out our pens and our papers, and to ask, in what ways am I genuinely experiencing suffering? In what ways am I perceiving suffering in this world? In what ways am I complicit to another person's suffering? In what ways have I created a golden calf in my life that obstructs my intimacy with my God? In what ways have I siloed myself out from community and really impeded on my ability to have an open heart with compassion? Let's have a moment just to kind of sit on that. I went to a place of being a mom and how hard it is, and how even in the greatest possible circumstance, the trigger can just be pressed perfectly by a 6-year-old and bam, rawr, mean mommy comes out. And I think it's such a fascination of how we switch. Tonight we sit in our brokenness and we go on the journey to begin again. We're in this journey. We went from the 9th of Av through a time of brokenness, through the 1st of Elul, Ani dodi le dodili, vedodili. I am my beloved and my beloved is mine, where there is a ripening and a playfulness of the intimacy of a concept of God. God comes to us through Elul as this idea of a lover from Shir HaShirim, right, from Song of Songs. This idea that God is this sensual partner, this paradigm of love. And from this paradigm of love that leads us through Elul, we spend the days each day with the sound of the shofar awakening us closer and closer to what will be the 1st of Tishrei. And it's important to have that intimacy with God, because what's going to happen is there's going to be a switch. And we're going to go from God as a lover to God as a monarch, to God as a sovereign, which is really quite a switch. We kind of collapse any kind of duality that might exist. The idea of there being perhaps a transcendent, unknowable God is gone, and all that is left for us as we enter into Tishrei is God as this king in the fields, the rabbis teach us. So we get to our first day of Tishrei with Yom Harat HaOlam. It is the day of creation. It is Rosh Hashanah. It is the head of the year, or it is the head of the apprehension of Shanui, of change. It is Yom HaZikaron. It is the day we peel back the curtain and we invite eternity to be intimate with us. It is Yom HaKisei. It's the day of occlusion. It is the day of mystery. It is the day of not knowing. It is Yom HaDin. It is the day of judgment. And also it is Yom Truah. It is the day of the Truah, the day of the sound of the shofar, the day when our neshamot are being asked to awaken and begin again. And we say on that day so beautifully, Tekiah. It is a day to awaken our souls. It is also the day where we come together. We come together in a great, great, great community. And David Suissa wrote something beautiful that I would like to, as we wind down, leave us with as our final kavanah for the Yamim Noraim as we enter. We will come back next week and talk about Yom Kippur, redeeming judgment. But David Suissa is writing this week in the Jewish Journal, creating is the opposite of consuming. Isn't this something for us to listen to? Instead of passively munching on something external, we actively create something internal, something rooted in our creative spirit. Let's think about that. When we think of one of the words for godliness is Haboreh, the Creator, and that our lives, like that metaphor I gave of pregnancy and gestation, of having this intelligence inside of us that knows what to do, how often do we allow ourselves to return to that playful place, to connect with that imperative being inside of us, that relentless desire to become? Haboreh, the Creator. Rosh Hashanah is the head of the day that we renew ourselves to connect with our Creator. The way that we have to do it, as we're finishing up, is this concept of tshuva, this concept of return, of cheshbon hanefesh, of an accounting of our soul. And right now, these days, as we near, we have 3 more days left. The 3 more days left bring us to this place of what's called hirhor tshuva. It's like an alarm clock going off. And we awaken our souls. Hirhor tshuva. Hirhor tshuva. Maimonides writes, know that all such religious acts as reading the law, prayer, and the performance of all other precepts serve exclusively as the means of causing us to occupy and fill our mind with the precepts of God and free it from worldly business, for we are thus, as it were, occupied with God. My fingernails grow, my eyes blink, that pulse, relentless. Maimonides concludes with, we are occupied with God and not with that which is other than God. Mordechai Kaplan and his disciple, Haro Shulwai, Zichrono Livrachem, always said these are the hands of God. And this year for the Amim Noraim, it is for us to take these hands and these ears and these noses and these mouths and the breath that we inhale and exhale and commit it, kind of consecrate it to this intention of godliness. And how do we convert ourselves? The technique I offer is the Amim Noraim. The technology offered us is this incredible antidote to the neurosis and anxiety in the world surrounding us today. To just turn it off, go into community, spend a moment with one another in prayer, as Maimonides said, contemplating concepts of law, natural law of the universe, concepts of the world and the earth, concepts of consciousness. Just spend some time, indulgently, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. Bring a snack on Rosh Hashanah, right? And just allow ourselves to apprehend what this means, that it's within us. We don't have to question what God is or is not. We just need to connect with our own selves, our animated selves, and then dedicate those selves to renewal. And perhaps through just that commitment, we will depart from this experience with some new understanding of our being and why we're here. It's an incredible technology we've been afforded, and I dare say the world needs it now more than ever. I'm going to leave us with a final thought. I want to remind us to do tshuva, ask for forgiveness, journal, pray, meditate, go to the mikvah, do spiritual direction, review our spiritual curriculum, commit to spiritual practices, and most importantly, tune in next week on Thursday night, because we're going to be right back here at 8 p.m. and we're going to discuss redeeming judgment. I say, please judge me now. I dare say our future depends upon it. So blessings for being here. Thank you so much. I hope we can continue this time together. I've had such a nice time together. Is that Carol Burnett? not Jewish. Anyway, it's a beautiful thing to come and to learn. And I look forward to hearing what questions, comments, insults, indignities, curiosities were inspired by tonight. Put them on the Jewish Journal website and know that this blessing is worth living. Thank you so much. See you next week.